Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground Podcast. I am your host, Joe Kuzma, and yes, I am back. It seems like a very long break since I last spoke to each and every one of you Pittsburgh Steelers, having played their first preseason game against the Detroit Lions last Friday. And yes, I was debating whether to do this show a little earlier, maybe over the weekend and whatnot, and even just trying to get it done for Monday. I had a little bit of personal scheduling problems, but that kind of worked to my favor and to your favor for what you're going to listen to today based on some of the news that came out a little bit earlier. Just want to let some of the listeners know that, yeah, I've been on kind of a strict schedule to try and get you shows at least twice a week on Mondays and Fridays, and as of recently, as many as 3, and like last week with a bonus episode, 4 episodes of the Steel City Underground podcast within 1 week. You could rest assured, at least though, coming into the season, I'm going to try my best. I don't know that the Monday morning quarterback thing is going to necessarily work out well, especially with Sunday Night Football. I just need some time to break down film, watch the games. And of course, I'm attending some of these games live, so just the travel to and from Pittsburgh, the tailgating, the partying, and whatnot, I'll be sure to share some of that information with you just as soon as I could sit down, find a nice little quiet corner to record in my home, and make sure I bring you the absolute best product as possible. So just a little bit of patience. I did send out a little notice on social media letting everyone know of the reschedule for today, and I know many of you look forward to the show, and that just, let me tell you, it just makes me feel great. Keep the feedback, the comments, the calls, everything, the comments, keep them coming. I love hearing them, and you know, I've got Kelly over on Twitter, who's always sending me stuff. Kelly, shout out to you. Thank you for the retweets, and thank you for all the mentions of all of the information that's out on steelcityunderground.com. For those of you who haven't been on the actual website in a while, and maybe you're just a casual listener just tuning into the show here, and that's okay. There's no problem with that, but just wanted to acknowledge some of the developments going on at steelcityunderground.com right now. Eric Herman, now full-time writer for SCU. Thank you, Eric, for jumping aboard this crazy ship wherever it ends up going. Jim Ricalto, also a new writer with a new article out talking about Sean Davis. So check that out. Jim's work his reputation precedes him. And then, of course, Brian Roach, who is working on a lot of the preview and reaction pieces from Black and Gold till I'm Dead in Cold. So Brian, Jim, and Eric, thank you. And I'm very happy to have all of you aboard. And then, of course, some of the historical pieces that you should look forward to seeing, whether it's a Way Back Wednesday, a Throwback Thursday, or a Flashback Friday. It's unbelievable we have so many excuses to just dwell on the past, right? But there's some really cool historical stuff coming your way by way of Ron Lippick of the Pittsburgh Sports Daily Bulletin, and also Scott Perry from the NFL since 1970. Both of those fine men will also be contributing various articles and pieces to the Steel City Underground website. And of course, we've always got things in the works, always networking with various other Steelers websites, podcasters, bloggers, and just general fans. I got a couple cool things in the works, including maybe some more roundtables, some other Steelers groups. The members and heads of those will be joining us to give us a little bit more insight on Steelers Nation, since we haven't had an opportunity to have one of those shows in a while. So just some fun things that are coming down the pipeline. But of course, I got to tackle this preseason game head on. I got to give my reaction to it. And it's not an overreaction, you know. As I was talking with Mark Ullman on the last episode, Steel Dad from Steel City Blitz, I should say better known as Steel Dad, we were talking about the different nicknames and whatnot. And me and Steel Dad were talking, we don't care about the scores. We don't care about wins and losses in the preseason. Mark Cabali of the Tribune, of course, from the Trib, he sends out a tweet and says something about, I think the Steelers have lost 12 of the last 14 preseason games. And I say to that, I throw my hands up in the air and say, who cares, really? I do not care whether the Steelers win or lose. I don't care how much they win or lose by, because Mike Tomlin and company, they're sending out whatever guys they need to evaluate and whatever situations they need to evaluate them for. So, for example, on the offensive side of the ball, Xavier Grimble was in at all kinds of various odd times throughout the game. You saw him early, you saw him late. On the defensive side of the ball, Javon Hargrave, much the same way. I had my eyes peeled just looking for these guys constantly. I think we had 2 number 46s on the field, which will always drive you batty and make you blink twice. I think one is now David Johnson has assumed the old Will Johnson number, I believe. I have to go back and look at that, actually. And then I think Tyler Matakevich may have been the other one wearing 46 as well. But a little bit of that's just the fog. Sorry, guys. It was Friday when I saw the game live, and I had a couple brewskis, too. So this is the reason why I do have to review and watch on TV or watch my DVR replay, the NFL Game Pass, the whole 9 yards, and just kind of disseminate and actually realize and recognize what I did see and what I didn't see. One thing I did see that looked different on TV as opposed to what happened in the game, and there's people that are just out here that absolutely just hate Landry Jones. You got to give the kid a chance. He is not a Hall of Famer. He is not Big Ben, nor will anyone ever be Big Ben. We place those expectations on other players trying to be Troy Polamalu's or James Harrison's. These guys are irreplaceable. They're never the same player. You're never going to get the same exact guy. Everyone is their own unique individual that brings their own set of talents to the table. So Big Ben is just an exceptional, one-of-a-kind, once-in-a-lifetime quarterback. To expect Landry Jones to step in and just do all these amazing things is just crazy to me to even think that we should turn our nose up at a 5 for 10 performance for what? Let me see. How many yards did Landry Jones? He had the touchdown, of course. I'm going to get to that here in a second. Landry Jones here, pulling this up, is, I'm sorry, not 5 for 10. He was 6 for 12. Still 50% completion percentage, 55 yards and a touchdown. Just marginally not much different than the 49ers starter Blaine Gabbert, who I was thinking of, who was 4 of 10, I think 63 yards and a touchdown in the 49ers game over the weekend. Guys, you just got to chillax on the whole Landry Jones situation. I get it. I thought the guy was terrible the first few years, especially in the preseason. He looked scared. He looked uncomfortable. This guy's coming to the line. Let me give you an example. Okay, there's a specific time during this game. I want to say it was the first or second down in the second quarter. Daryl Richardson is in the game, and Landry Jones comes up to the line. He has his snap count already set. He with the huddle, he goes out. He gives the false count, watches something, gets a reaction from the defense, responds to it, changes audibles. Well, I don't think it was a full audible. I think it was just a matter of which side of the line they were going to run to, or he may have changed out of it to a run play, but whatever the call was at the line, throws up the little bullhorn signal for whatever that's supposed to signify. Daryl Richardson gets a nice little chunk of yards out of that, and I believe a first down out of it, but it was a nice run play. One of those things that made Daryl Richardson look really good in Friday's game. Daryl Richardson, definitely a bright spot for the Steelers. I liked seeing what he was capable of doing. Fitz Toussaint only carried the ball 2 times for 8 yards. He had a 5-yard long, but Richardson 11 for 44 with ripping off a 13-yard run. I don't think that the call at the line was the one, but it was a decent chunk of yards that he got there, maybe about 8 or 9 yards. So, of course, everybody's just they're against Landry Jones. I don't get it. I don't. The guy throws the ball. He made Daryl Richardson look good there. He throws the ball down the field. And one of the things I think people need to realize is I'm sitting there. One of the things I said that was different on TV than what was sitting there in person. So Landry Jones throws this ball on 3rd down. He throws a deep ball to Darius Hayward-Bay, and it looks like it was kind of short, and it was kind of nowhere near Darius Hayward-Bay, and you're looking at it on TV. You're probably throwing your beer at the TV if it was a regular season game. But from my seats and my perspective, and I bumped into Nathaniel Bodner from the Steel City Report, who maybe, you know what, Nate, maybe me and you should get on the next time and do this preview, because I think we were looking at the same thing. We weren't too far apart with our sections, texting back and forth, and I said, geez, looks like Hayward-Bay just ran the wrong route there. And Nate kind of agreed, because you see Hayward Bay kind of breaks inside and towards the safety help. He kind of runs into the coverage and never really looked back, and it was just kind of driving me crazy. He just kind of almost ran a straight line, then broke towards the inside of the field instead of the outside toward the sideline, which is where you would probably want one of these passes thrown, because at least that way if it gets batted or it's overthrown, it's going to be out of bounds. It's going to be an incompletion. You don't lose the ball. You don't want to throw it towards the middle of the field. We saw what happened when Landry Jones did that in the Cincinnati Bengals game, and a lot of people are just still very upset over him coming in and doing that. This was my response to that on Twitter earlier, or what I wanted to respond. I try and pick my Twitter fights and plant my flag where necessary, and other times it's just the 80-20 rule, and I got to go on with life. I got other articles to write, other podcasts to record, and trying to coordinate this whole team that I was telling you about earlier. So I'm not going to get in an argument on Landry Jones, this or that, and disseminate every single play. However, if you were standing in the cold and in the rain and it's a playoff game and there's a lot of nerves, and Big Ben gets, he's now out and he's hurt and they're throwing trash at him in a hostile away environment, and you come in, how are you gonna react? The game's on the line. It's the end of almost the end of the fourth quarter. So I could certainly understand being in those shoes. Well, maybe not. I've never been in that specific situation, but I could sympathize with it. I definitely sympathize with Landry Jones there. But it just looked like Darius Hayward Bay. Either Landry Jones had the wrong route in his head, maybe he was thinking the wrong thing, or Darius Hayward Bay screwed it up, or maybe both. But in the way that teamwork has to work together in order to draw up or have a bad play that doesn't execute properly, you have the same thing that actually happens later on when Darius Hayward Bay makes that nice corner end zone, that little fade route that Landry Jones just puts it up right there. And that was actually following, I think, the Richardson run. I think that was a first down, now that I come to think of it, because Todd Haley, as we know, isn't afraid to throw the ball. First down, third down, whatever. But that first down, it's almost like they're going to take that shot if they feel they could get it, and they got it there. Nice catch by Hayward Bay, both feet down, ball secured. Landry Jones puts it on a dime. Somebody still had the guts to say, well, I know who it was. It was my pardon the interruption guy. We never see eye to eye, Ben. I'm always going to call you the PTI guy, but the one precision pass that he throws in the game. And I tend to disagree. I do think a lot has been made about Sammy Coates in this game too, and I think I'm going to get to that topic here in a second, but I do think that Sammy Coates, there was maybe one or two times early, maybe even in that first quarter, where the plays were drawn up maybe for Sammy Coates. He just wasn't open. Landry Jones checks down to somebody, I think either Toussaint or Richardson, and there was another one that was very similar to that. So he's going through his reads. He was moving in the pocket. The one time he gets sacked, Alejandro Villanueva and I want to say Fitz Toussaint on that play, both of them miss a block. So Lions defender comes through, beats the left tackle, beats the running back, comes right through, gets Landry Jones. Not Landry Jones' fault. He did not hold the ball that long. It was just like our two players just completely missed who they were supposed to be blocking there. And it just, that type of stuff, the breakdowns, it's part of football. This stuff happens. So, but Landry Jones did try and complete a third down pass to Darius Hayward Bay on another time earlier in the game. Hayward Bay's hands right there, and they were obviously made of stone. Didn't complete what should have been a surefire first down there. There was another one, and I think it was a real hard pass that was thrown maybe to Jesse James. Jesse James had a defender on his back. You're not always going to get those type of calls. It pretty much hit him right in the pads or in the numbers. Maybe not the easiest catch, and maybe not the biggest completion. It would have only been for maybe 3 or 4 yards. So those are the kind of things when you look at going 6 for 12, that could easily be 9 for 12, whether Landry Jones is back there or Ben Roethlisberger. These type of things happen. Ben is not immune to not throwing picks at certain times. We've seen bad passes. Everyone has bad games. For what it's worth, I thought Landry Jones was okay back there. I'm not going to beat a dead horse on this. Most people hate Landry Jones. They're going to hate me saying this and just shut off the show forever. But I'm just going to give him that much, and that's about all I have to say about Hayward Bay as well. Of course, a lot to be made about Sammy Coates. 2 fumbles in this game, 1 recovered by Jesse James. Good heads-up play by Jesse James to be aware of what's going on when trying to be out there as a lead blocker. Sammy Coates, I mean, the pretty much the end part of that second quarter and part of the third quarter, I want to say as well, with Bruce coming out there, a lot was it was made to be his show. He was given the opportunity to shine. It took him a little while. I'm not sure if he had the same jitters. Sean Davis came out and said he also had the jitters. It's his first NFL game. Sean Davis trying to tackle people by just kind of bowling them over Ryan Clark style. Tries to hit him with his shoulder pads, whatnot. You got to wrap up and tackle. He did that in a few instances too. Had a very nice play, I want to say, on a short pass or a run, just totally blew it up. He's definitely in the position of where he needs to be. The guys are fast. Very impressed with Sean Davis. Not totally overall, because like I said, he did miss some tackles, but it's just as the growing process and realizing this is a preseason game and looking at individual performances, I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable so far. We're going to see as he progresses throughout these other games. I believe he will. And of course, as he does, I'll feel better. If it tends to be worse, like Shamarko Thomas, I believe Shamarko Thomas, and somebody could stick their foot in my butt and tell me I'm wrong, but on that one touchdown play that Robert Golden nearly makes a tackle short of the end zone, they have to review it. They call a touchdown on the field. It ends up being held up. I do believe Shamarko Thomas blew the coverage on that. Shamarko, I think, had like a nice tackle somewhere too, but for the most part, I want to say he was beat maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the night. It's not what you want to see from someone. It's very reminiscent of last year's preseason. I felt a lot more comfortable, at least with Sean Davis, knowing that he's a rookie and not a fourth-year player making those type of mistakes. So leave it at that much. But the DB surprise, of course, for the night, formerly out of Ohio State, the Ohio State University, a former Buckeye, Doran Grant, of course, getting a pick 6 and getting that in part to another surprise, Ricardo Matthews. Wow, Ricardo Matthews, let me tell you, wearing the old number 90 that Steve McClendon abandoned after being signed with the Jets. I didn't think there would be much of Matthews, and I don't know if it was just that veteran knowledge that he had going up against some second or third teamers with the Detroit Lions offensive line, but he was disruptive as anybody. And maybe this is just something, I mean, the Steelers always have their pulse on other teams. Of course, other teams do as well. Acquiring Ross Cockrell last year off waivers. Who me and Eric were also talking about. The Steelers are probably going to be looking at someone off waivers, if not just at the safety position, but also as corner, with Ross Ventrone being placed on injured reserve and his season effectively done, because I do not believe they will use a designation to return at any point now that they could do that designation later on. Ross Ventrone already... He's done, and I feel bad. Ross was one of those guys you really want to root for, an underdog, but it really hurts the Steelers as far as their secondary depth. They're already working out Doran Grant, the darling of this preseason game, at safety as of yesterday and today's practice as being reported. So Doran Grant, I think, is making that second-year leap. It's a guy we didn't hear from, didn't take very many snaps, and picks off Dan Orlovsky, which, by the way, would you rather have Dan Orlovsky as a backup? He gets a guy that has been a nobody in San Diego that gets in his face, and he throws up a duck to another guy, a corner, Doran Grant, who has really had no time other than a little bit of preseason time, barely if that, and it gives up a pick 6. So Doran Grant looking sharp out there, nearly had a fumble recovery as well. I think that one was the one that was ruled like the backward pass and not a catch, but I think somebody was standing out of bounds and it wouldn't have stood up anyway as a turnover had it been ruled a turnover on the field, and they did the whole video replay. So I just wish the referees would have done that instead of whatever BS that they made up. I think Grant or Davis too got called for a horse collar that wasn't really a horse collar. We saw it on TV. So the officials as well. I defend the officials quite a bit. I defended them with the whole Antonio Brown bit that happened when he was screaming at a referee a week or two ago as well. The officials this is preseason for them. They're working out these bugs. They're gonna look at tape just as much as the players or anyone else will, realize their mistakes, hopefully be sharper come the regular season. So I won't hang my hat on that as well. But I thought Ricardo Matthews looking pretty good. Doran Grant looking pretty good as well. We also had James Harrison with the strip sack, I think recovered by Arthur Motes. Man, does anybody look as good or as ready as James Harrison? James Harrison's just full go all the time, and the poor guys that are trying to block him, I wouldn't want to line up on the other side of the football from James Harrison. 38 years old, got a motor that's like 18 years old. Absolutely got to love him. Of course, with the defensive side of the ball too, just looking at Javon Hargrave, there was a video clip that was posted by Steel Dad you could check out. It actually isn't titled anything about Javon Hargrave. I think that actually was one of the Sean Davis plays, or Welcome to the NFL Sean Davis. But geez, Javon Hargrave got one heck of a push on this play, and you could just tell that this guy is going to be a force as well. So I'm very, very pleased so far with what the Steelers have at the defensive tackle or defensive line. I think they're pretty much set with who is going to be on that roster. Ricardo Matthews definitely made a case for him to make this roster. Doran Grant too. Just the pick six alone, that's just not going to do it. We've seen flashy, splashy type plays like that by other defenders who've been cut in the past. But I think Doran Grant, definitely one of these athletic guys. Hey, if he's versatile, we're always talking about versatility here. If he could play corner and safety and maybe even play some of this nickel stuff, I think that also tends to lend itself to what's going to happen with Shamarko Thomas. If they're already trying to work out Doran Grant like that, I think Shamarko's ship has sailed in Pittsburgh. We shall see, though. He may be a guy that makes his team just based on a lack of other bodies to fill in there. And one of those bodies I was hoping to see more of was Ray Vinipal, who actually jumped the route on the Lions 2-point try later, I want to say around the fourth quarter. Really only got a couple special teams reps in, including a tackle on one of the kicker punt returns, I want to say. And so now with Ross Ventrone going to the IR, Jordan Dangerfield was getting more of those reps later in the game over Vinipal. This is another chance for him. We're going to see what happens Thursday, and then of course we're going to head into the cut from 90 men on the roster to 75 very soon thereafter. So the clock is ticking on him. We talked about Roy Fallon, of course, who was hurt. Me and Steel Dad said that his time in Pittsburgh would probably be pretty short, and he was already set packing. Steelers already making some moves and some other roster transactions, and some of these young men that are coming in are already facing an uphill battle. Not very much time left in training camp, just these few days, and then the Steelers will call a wraps on it, go straight to practice, then have to cut 15 people from the roster. So these guys got a very short window to try and impress. Unfortunately, they're probably going to get the label of camp bodies. One of those guys I hope that doesn't get that is Tyler Matakevich. I think he pops into the game and gets the first two tackles on the very first two downs that he was playing. That guy has some closing speed. He has, I don't think he was known as a speed guy, and they were saying football instincts. But let me tell you what, those instincts and just having like that that mental, I don't know if it's a mental clock or just maybe a crystal ball on his head, just knowing where to go and where to be on the field, certainly being able to predict kind of what's going to happen, kind of just looking ahead and figuring it out before it happens is definitely working. That football instinct working for Tyler Matakevich. Excited to see more of him as the preseason goes on and see if he can make this team. Now, the punters, I've always been talking, I love the punters. Punters are people too. I was talking about Jordan Berry. I did talk about Will Monday. Jordan Berry just booming. I think he had a 62-yard punt, a 60-yard punt, and a 53-yard punt. In fact, if I could pull this up here while I'm BSing about it, I'm going to see if I could find, it doesn't look like NFL.com has this. Let's see. I got punt returns. I got punting. The 61-yarder was the long for Jordan Berry. He had 3 punts with an average of 56.3. Like I said, sometimes the punts, those actual averages don't mean much of squadoo, as you would hear somebody say on Sopranos. It don't mean much of anything if the Steelers have decent field position but are just outside of field goal range. They're going to try and pin some guys. We saw a few of the sky kicks, as I told you to look out for, too. In fact, the game opened up with one, I want to say, that the Steelers came out and returned. And, of course, talking about the returners, actually, Eli Rogers didn't really get much of a chance to do much. Just going back to the punters real quick. Jordan Berry booming them. Will Monday did not have a very solid start to his preseason. I think this position is Barry's to lose. We'll see how this goes on. But with the guys returning them, we saw Rogers on a little sweep pass. Or a little, end around. And he looked pretty good. DeMarcus Ayers got to carry the ball once too and made the most of it. He's a little bit smaller of a guy too. So Eli Rogers getting a lot of reps out there in the slot with the ones. He didn't have Marcus Wheaton in this game or Antonio Brown in this game either. So we're going to see what Eli Rogers does in this next game. Wearing number 17, the old Mike Wallace number. Apparently, the coaching staff were impressed enough to see, hey, what can this guy do with some of the first-team guys? Well, I guess not even really first-team guys, but top of the depth chart guys, because you didn't have Bell, you didn't have D'Angelo Williams, and obviously you didn't have Big Ben or Marquise Pouncey out there as well. So, once again, I thought pretty decent showing for Eli Rogers for what little we were able to see of him. Excited to see more coming up. On the injury front, of course, Anthony Chiquillo, he was a little banged up and being evaluated. And then, of course, Bruce Gradkowski, had I ran this podcast early in the morning, on Monday morning as I had planned, wouldn't have heard the full news about a torn hamstring and potentially another lost season for Bruce G. Unfortunately, this could be the end of Bruce G's time as a Steeler. He will most likely be placed on injured reserve if this is something that can't be healed up real quick. The Steelers send Dustin Vaughn out. He is the rookie quarterback that's out there that's signed every year. I say they're the sacrificial lamb. You got to have a guy to throw passes in these rookie camps, so that's where the fourth quarterback usually comes from in most of these camps. So now the Steelers may be in the market and in the position to find another quarterback. There aren't very many on the market. I was talking with Nate about this. We're going back and forth on Twitter. I'm sure most of you have already seen my opinion on whether or not the Steelers should bring back Michael Vick. And I've been very tough on Michael Vick. I can't believe I find myself in a position where I'm defending Michael Vick. But a few episodes ago, Nick Signorelli and I were discussing that Michael Vick really didn't have much time to learn this playbook. Now, if you want to remember when Todd Haley was brought in as the offensive coordinator and all the trouble and all the hoopla and all the problems that came with, oh, well, Big Ben, the system is very difficult and uses difficult terminology, and it's just very hard to learn, and it's going to take some time and blah, blah, blah. Well, as soon as you learn it, you could see what happens. So if it was that tough for a quarterback that we hold on such a high regard as Ben Roethlisberger, what's it going to be like for a guy like Michael Vick that comes in last year, plays in the third week of the preseason, which was actually the Steelers' fourth preseason game, if I recall correctly. I think they were playing the Buffalo Bills. And I mean, Vic really, between that game and the last two games, the only two games he played in the preseason, only attempts a total of 10 passes. I think 5 in each game. He had one long bomb to Martavis Bryant that got us all very excited for what Michael Vick could be in the worst case scenario should he come in. That ends up happening. Michael Vick comes in. I think he's had not even a full 8 weeks of practice at that point, because he signed even later than now. We're only maybe about a dozen days into August. He comes in around maybe the 24th or 25th of August. I think he signed last year. And then the regular season kicks off around September 10th, September 11th, somewhere wherein he hasn't even been around a full month there. And then, of course, week 3, Ben goes down against the St. Louis Rams in the third quarter. Michael Vick comes in, and everything's kind of limited because Vic doesn't know this playbook. He's been around maybe a month and a half at the most. However many practices you want to total up there, 3 or 4 practice days, whatever it might be, the meetings and whatnot. So he's still learning this system. Then he's a left-handed quarterback, so the team has to flip everything that they're doing, and it's very awkward, very foreign for them. And Ben gets hurt in this Rams game, and then the Steelers, that's a Sunday away game. They have to come back to Pittsburgh and play at home on Thursday against a division rival, and they still nearly win that game, even with what Nick and I were saying was maybe 25% of the playbook at best. You run through all those plays pretty quickly throughout the course of a game, let alone playing in overtime. So they're drawing up stuff on the sideline because they are afraid to give the ball back in a decent position if they miss another field goal with Josh Scobie, who, if he would have made either of those 2 field goals, overtime wouldn't have happened. Michael Vick would have been a hero, and we wouldn't even be talking about how bad Vick was, maybe maybe we wouldn't be talking about how bad Vick was. I thought Vick wasn't exactly strong, but when you're playing with such a limited hand and he doesn't know the playbook and you're just trying to get up to speed, it's a very uncomfortable position for a veteran. However, we are 1 year later. If the Steelers feel that Vick knew the playbook, Vick hopefully would be comfortable and had all of the rest of that year and that season to get acquainted with Todd Haley's system, also with the other players. I say, why not? If Bruce Gradkowski goes on injured reserve, I think Landry Jones is probably going to win the backup position to begin with. Why not go out, get Michael Vick, solid veteran. Yes, he's older, but as a third option, as the clipboard guy, if Michael Vick feels good about that, he's been known to say he wants to play one more year. He feels he has something he can offer teams. I think he knows his role is in a backup capacity, but he did say he wants to play for a contender, and what contender would be better than a team vying for its 7th Lombardi trophy? Third string QB, I'm not saying a starter. Remember this, I can't believe I am defending a guy who we thought couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, but if you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, as we said, with not having enough time to get up to snuff, kind of getting thrown out there, I mean, what better could we do? I'm tongue-tied. I can't believe I'm saying some of this stuff. I'm sure a lot of people will agree or disagree with me, but what are you going to do that's better out there? Nate says Matt Flynn. A little bit better of a quarterback rating, but then again, he was throwing passes in Green Bay. I want to say that Landry Jones would probably look a lot worse, like a Ryan Nassib. Well, Ryan Nassib shouldn't look too bad playing with the New York Giants either. They definitely have some options there, but once again, I'd much rather have Landry Jones as the number 2 than Ryan Nassib, who they were taken out of the same draft. The Ryan Nassib had a horrible preseason game. Once again, he is still kind of one of those guys that are very iffy. Like I said, Dan Orlovsky or something like that plays for the Lions. Okay, Landry Jones, he's won you a couple games. Michael Vick, capable of winning you a few games. I think the talent surrounding any of these two guys will be fine enough, but I don't want to jinx anything. Cross our fingers. We have Big Ben for all 16 games. Just have a veteran there that is capable of giving some advice and just being a locker room presence, hopefully not a hindrance. And I think that's Michael Vick would be way better than many of the other options available to you in free agency. Of course, this is assuming the Steelers don't see something with Dustin Vaughn, the guy who was brought in to basically not throw a pass at all, as we saw Taj Boyd, Brendan Kay, other guys that are brought in a very same capacity. Heck, Tyler Murphy, who was a wide receiver project, brought in and actually wasn't even supposed to be throwing passes, threw some passes, I want to say, in that Hall of Fame game. Not very many, but he was still throwing passes ahead of Taj Boyd last year. It just goes to show you Taj Boyd is definitely not an option to bring in unless the Steelers are very comfortable with Dustin Vaughn being a number 3. I don't think that's necessarily the case. So don't be surprised if all the Vick rumor mill things start getting amped up as we approach this Thursday game. Ladies and gentlemen, I will be back with you for a preview of that game at Heinz Field once again for week 2 of the preseason against the Philadelphia Eagles this Thursday. Look for it. Maybe Wednesday afternoon around this same time slot, or at the latest Thursday morning later this week. Until then, be safe, be good, and I will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.